All right, so if you're asked to multiply complex numbers, you can treat this as if I asked you to say x plus 2 times x minus 3. If you can multiply this together, then you can multiply complex numbers. All right, we can use our FOIL method, our first, our outer, our inner, and our last. So we can do our first times our first, which is x squared, our outer times our outer, which is minus 3x, our inner times our inner, which is plus 2x, and then our last times our last, which is minus 6. Combine our like terms, which we then get x squared minus x minus 6. If you can do this, you can multiply complex numbers. The only thing now is we won't have x squared. We'll have I squared. And what does I squared equal to? Right, that's the only difference, is there will be one more step at the end that you will have to do because I squared does equal a number. All right, but when we do this, we do our FOIL method. Our first times our first, that gives me minus 4. Our outer times our outer, that gives me minus 8i. Our inner times our inner, which then will give me minus 3i. And our last times our last, which is then going to give me minus 6i squared. Right? Nothing changes. We will combine like terms. So we get negative 4 minus 8i minus 3i is minus 11i minus 6i squared. Right, now, what does I squared equal to? Right, I squared is equal to negative 1. So where we see this I squared at, we can write negative 4 minus 11i minus 6 times negative 1. Right, so this is the only difference, is now there's one more step to it, because unlike this x squared where it doesn't equal to anything, this I squared is equal to negative 1. So negative 6 times negative 1 gives me a positive 6. So it's negative 4 minus 11i plus 6. And then we'll combine our like terms of negative 4 plus 6. So it's 2 minus 11i. All right, it's the exact same thing as FOILing, except for now we have an I squared is equal to something. All right, it's equal to negative 1. So one more problem, and then we're done with this video. All right, so now if we're asked to multiply these two numbers, same thing, we will use our FOIL method. Our first, our outer, our inner, and our last. So we do our first times our first, so negative 6 times negative 6 is 36. Our outer, negative 6 times negative I is plus 6i. Our inner, I times negative 6, so minus 6i. And then our last is I times negative I, which is then going to give me minus I squared. All right, now we look to combine like terms. So here we notice we have positive 6i minus 6i, so they're going to cancel out and be equal to 0. So then it's 36 minus I squared. And what does I squared equal to again? It's equal to negative 1. So it becomes 36 minus negative 1, which this then becomes 36 plus 1, or 37. All right, so this final answer is equal to 37. Now, one of the things that we're going to talk about in the next video is you notice how here it was the exact same equation or expression written. Negative 6i plus I, negative 6i minus I. It's the same numbers, negative 6 and I. The only difference is we have a minus sign and a plus sign. Right? So that is called our conjugate, when we have the same number but just different signs in front of our I. And when that happens, our linear term, if you want to call it linear term, our i's will cancel out and be equal to 0. So this allows for us to simplify and just get a number, and it gets rid of our imaginary number. This is actually what we're going to do next in our next video when we're talking about dividing complex numbers. All right, and that will be in our next video.